Assalamu alaikum, guys. Thank you for tuning in onto our 5th episode, if I'm not mistaken. Today's topic is we just wrapped up a really good discussion about preparing for Ramadan, little tips from our own personal experience that have helped us to get the most out of this blessed month as much as possible. Would you guys say that this was a pretty decent conversation we had?
Yes, it was. I think this conversation is really good for somebody who's trying to get in that mindset to get Ramadan, to get their Ramadan kind of kicking for themselves. So inshallah, listen to the whole episode. We talk about a lot of very interesting topics that relate to Ramadan, including righting your wrongs and preparing your heart and your mind for Ramadan.
Right. And also keep in mind, this is our first episode for season 2. Yep. We're going to be kicking off today, and we hope to see you guys listen to us
next week
continuously.
Which is Ramadan,
week,
inshallah. See you guys in Ramadan, inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. You know what's crazy, actually, before we even start this? What? I was thinking that next Sunday is going to be, next Sunday's podcast, we're going to be fasting, bro. Ramadan came up that fast, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. So today's topic actually is involving Ramadan. It's our very first episode of our new season. And the topic of this episode is preparing for Ramadan. So I think our first priority in getting ourselves ready for Ramadan is finding a way to kick our bad habits, right?
Right.
So sadly, over the year, many of us accumulate these bad habits as soon as Ramadan is over. And after Ramadan, you know, shaitan is back in the picture. So it becomes difficult for everybody to stay consistent, right? That 1 month of consistency goes away because shaitan is back, and we slowly fall off. Sadly, that's what happens to a lot of us. And once that community spirit is gone and that spiritual elevation kind of dies out, that's when we find it difficult to like keep up with our ibadah, right?
Yeah.
Kicking our bad habits, I think, should be the very first thing that we focus on before even thinking about doing anything any good. We have to get rid of the evil in order to focus on the good, right? Yeah. So before Ramadan, what are some things you guys do to kind of kick your bad habits and kind of get yourself in that mindset for Ramadan?
Well, I would start with the earlier the better. You know what I mean? You don't want to quote unquote kick off your bad habits the day before Ramadan or right when it begins, because that's just a recipe for disaster. So the key, I would say, is to start off as early as you can. You know, try to like already start thinking about start reflecting about what are your bad habits. You know, are you someone with a bad temper? Or are you someone that, you know, has some type of bad deed that you do consistently? And so identify your bad and then start like working on strategies beforehand on getting rid of them, you know? Come with the game plan is what I'm basically saying.
I mean, coming up to the month of Ramadan, you know, like you said, there's a week left, right? So I think one important thing to do is to have self-reflection. So, you know, you look back at your previous Ramadan too, and you identify things that you feel like you should have done more on. Like, you know, say a person wants to, say you tell yourself, oh, I want to pray all 5 prayers on the assigned time, or reading more Quran. Those are like things you want to carry over into this Ramadan and make a sincere intention to, you know, that you're going to do these things as well as, and then as far as bad habits too, the thing is with that, one thing that really plays with our mind too is, you know, not being able to let go of the past too, you know? So you got to be able to fully commit to letting go of your past and these past habits, and realize that it's not a one-day thing too. You know, you're not going to get over your bad habits in one day, but but the biggest thing I will say is you got to be sincere in making that change before all else, and making dua that, you know, you're going to make this change for the better, and that it's not just for you, but it's for the one above.
Yes. That sincere intention is definitely very important. And that's the first, I think that's the first step in kicking our bad habits. And then I also think a good method is replacing a bad habit with a good one, right? So let's say this is a very, very common issue that a lot of us have is listening to music, right?
Yeah.
Before Ramadan kicks in, even a month before, slowly try to kick out of that habit of listening to music and replace it with a motivational video, a video of like listening to Quran. You know, you want to get your mindset, because you don't want to be listening to Drake the night before Rosa, right? Before Ramadan. It's like, oh, let me get this last Drake song in before Ramadan starts.
Well,
So if you do have that habit, replace that habit with something good, right? So I think that would be very beneficial as well.
One thing I've always liked about Ramadan, right, and this goes into our topic a lot, is that this is the month that offers us the opportunity for a clean slate. You know, there's a hadith in Bukhari. It says that it is stated that whoever fasts the month of Ramadan, all the sins will be forgiven. You know, so this is something to keep in mind of. You know, if you've accumulated these bad habits and you think you've done them so many times, and you just feel like you're just a pile of walking sin, right? Well, this is the opportunity now. You could get rid of it all in one go. So, you know, use that as your motivation, you know, the clean slate.
One other thing too is it's also important to know why you're fasting during the month of Ramadan too. It's not just one of those things where you just go into it and have that mindset like, oh, this is just what I have to do. Like, no, take a minute, take a deeper dive into why you're doing this, and, you know, have like that groundwork that this is why I'm doing it, because the reason as to why has to be your reason for everything. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you have to realize that fasting during Ramadan is just beyond, you know, fasting X amount of hours, you know.
It has a lot to do with your environment as well, right? Yeah. So the environment that you're around before or even during Ramadan can heavily impact your ibadah during that month. And by that, I mean, you want to stay away from those friend groups that pull you away from Allah, right? And pull you away from worship and distract you. And especially during Ramadan, you want to be focused more on those friend groups within the masjid with other people that are fasting with you. You want to be around people that have the same mindset as you. That way you can make the most out of your Ramadan, right? You're not kind of stuck between, oh, I'm fasting, but then my friends want to go to this concert or this festival. You know what I mean?
Okay, let me ask you guys a genuine question. I'm pretty sure most of the viewers on this podcast are college students, you know, who have hobbies and things like that. You know, other hobbies.
Yeah, 18 through 24 is our major age group.
Right, exactly. So fasting, going to college, studying, and working. What advice can you give to those people that are, you know, what's some good advice we can give to those people who are in that circle, you know? Yeah,
the advice is this: make a routine, you know? Yeah. Like have it, man, if you even need to write it down, but make a routine. You don't necessarily have to have it strict as like a to-do list, but make like a list of stuff that you think will take up your day.
That's very good advice, actually. And then also going back to what I mentioned earlier, kick those bad habits, because those bad habits like binge watching and listening to music are all a waste of time, right? And in the month of Ramadan, you want to make the most out of your time. So kick those bad habits out and make time for the things that you need to make time for: work, school, Quran, prayer, masjid, tarawih, because Ramadan for all of us is a very busy month. Yeah. We want to have fun during Ramadan and be with one another, you know, and have that community environment. But then we're also very busy and we get caught up with our own things. So kicking those bad habits not only is gonna make Ramadan easier for you, but it's also going to bring you closer to your worship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I think it's all about being able to prioritize your main goals, you know. During Ramadan, you got to prioritize Allah above everything else. You know, of course, we live in we have this worldly factor too, that, you know, you got to go to school, you got to work and all those things too. That's fine. But at the same time, don't let that come in between you and in this blessed month, because then at the end of the day, it's going to be no different than any other day that you go through.
Yeah, that's very true. It's going to be no different than any other month, actually.
Right, exactly.
The month of Ramadan is going to fly by and you're going to be like, oh man, the whole month went by and
I didn't
nothing
benefit
changed
from it.
Yeah, nothing changed.
With bad habits too, I have like 2 pieces of advice too. You know, psychologically, like they did research on this. If you want to make a good habit or you want to break a bad habit, the key is to force yourself to do it 21 like days in a row. If you do that, according to like modern psychology, it will become a habit, you know? And so that is something to think about. Yeah. And also remember too that in Ramadan, if you have like a really bad habit, know that you're like literally restricting yourself from eating, you know? So if you can like control yourself to the point where you don't have to eat, you can kick off this bad habit. So just keep these two things in mind.
It's about training your brain. So like you mentioned, also science has also proven that it's nearly impossible to leave a bad habit by trying to simply just stop doing it, right? Yeah. Our brain needs to create new pathways in order to overcome bad habits. So just like there's a craving in the mind of a drunk person to obtain pleasure by drinking alcohol, one who prays often and worships Allah often also develops that same pleasure, but they develop that pleasure through prayer. They don't develop that pleasure through drinking alcohol, right? So why not train your brain to develop this pleasure through something beneficial like prayer, rather than training your brain to benefit through something like drinking alcohol, which harms the body.
I have a question for you guys. So like I'm trying to get a psych degree, right? And I learned about this in class, but basically you guys are like aware of like dopamine, right? Well, basically, they say one of the reasons why people get like into bad habits, whatever it be, like, right? One of the reasons is because like having like a particular bad habit, it's easy, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to exert a lot of effort into it. But now say you want to work out, right? You actually get like, you feel more rewarded doing it. But the issue is that you have to start doing it. Like you have to like exert way more effort beginning something like that.
It has a lot to do with that buildup of dopamine in your brain as well. You mentioned a very good point, because something as easy as drinking alcohol, it's easy to develop that dopamine buildup in the brain, right? Because all you have to do is drink to develop that buildup. It's not hard. But once you become addicted, you require more and more of it just to get the same level of dopamine. Yeah, your body requires it. It relies on it to get the same level of dopamine. So why don't we switch the gears around and rely on prayer that way, right? I'm not saying that we are drinking, but for somebody that's not drinking and just has minor bad habits, why not switch those minor bad habits around and train your brain's dopamine to focus on prayer, right?
Yeah, you know what the scary thought is? Like, with regards to music too, they did a lot of research on this too. Music has a lot of like addicting effects too, man. There's people, man, that rely on music almost the whole day to like function throughout it, you know?
I mean, you notice
you don't want to go through that. Yeah.
Especially, I apologize about cutting you off, but especially like I remember being back in high school, really mindful thing was that one thing I really took big note of is that a lot of people like throughout their class schedule and period or whatever, they would always have their earphones in. They always had to listen to some sort of song, and then I'd ask them like, why do you need to listen to all this music all day? It's like, I just needed to get me through the day, you know. And at the same time, you got to look at the context of what this music of what these artists are putting out nowadays, because these things affect the way we think and the way we they have a greater effect on our emotions than we believe, you know what I mean?
So that's true. It's like those kids listening to music in school, like you said, they are in a way training their brain, but they're not training their brain in a good way, right?
One thing too is like, I feel like, yes, when you make that intention, that's really good, but at the same time, you have to realize it's not going to be easy. I feel like a lot of people, they think that, okay, like I'm going to make this intention and I'm going to expect change. Yes, you make dua, you're supposed to, but at the same time, you got to do your own part too, you know?
Yeah, it's not just about making the intention, it's about changing your environment and changing the way you live life altogether.
It's a lifestyle change.
Yeah, man. I would say if you are someone that's in that, like, you can almost say addicted phase, where you're so addicted to like some kind of like wrongdoing, then the only like solution to that first is the intention. Then you got to get yourself busy, you know what I mean? Because you're already addicted, right? So you're obviously going to like feel way more inclined to do something wrong than like most others. So the only way to distract yourself from that. So you got to like make a routine, get yourself busy throughout the day.
Yeah, there's no losing when you have that mindset, man.
What is your opinion? Like, because, you know, in the modern society we live in too, of course, the number one source you're supposed to rely on is Allah. But I think one other important thing too is to realize that it's perfectly fine getting professional help too, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with professional help.
I think, yeah, exactly. But, you know, people are afraid of that professional help because that they fear about looking like an outcast, you know?
Man, I wish I had knowledge on that topic, but that's true. It's a very common thing that people don't have. Oftentimes, especially here in America, people don't have somebody to turn to. They're very lonely, right?
Mm-hmm.
So seeking professional help, from what I've heard, I think it would be very beneficial for one rather than struggle with their problems alone.
You know, it's crazy that you mentioned that, like, you know, people don't have nobody to turn to. That's what makes them turn to those like bad habits. Like, you know, so it's, for example, you said drinking or being on the phone, looking at inappropriate things like that, you know, because they find comfort and ease in those activities, you know. Mm-hmm. So what, like, to combat that, I feel like a lot of people, they forget that, you know, there is the one to turn to that will never leave you in any kind of circumstance, the one you could cry to, the one that you could, you know, tell anything to, because he's the all-knowing and all-watching, you know?
Yeah. It's not only is the remembrance of Allah a good deed for the hereafter, mm-hmm. but it also deters us from the indecency of this dunya, right?
Yeah.
So that goes back to your point, is that why are we gearing our focus on things like alcohol that create a worse addiction and worse habits, rather than kind of focusing that attention towards the remembrance of Allah, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I do have another thing that you mentioned earlier in this podcast, and I wanted to mention it too, is do not hold on to the past. I think a lot of people, and then you were actually mentioning it too.
Clean slate.
Yeah, you want to have a clean slate, right? You want to put your heart at a sense of comfort before Ramadan begins, and you don't want to have that mindset that it's too late for me, or that I don't want to be forgiven,
or you're too far gone.
Exactly, because Shaitan has an agenda to make you lose hope in the mercy of Allah, right? Mm-hmm. And the devil said to Allah as well, I shall continue to lead your servants astray as long as their souls are in their bodies. And Allah in return said, I shall continue to pardon them as long as they ask for my forgiveness. Mm-hmm. So if you give up on yourself, you're giving up on Allah, right?
Yeah, so, most importantly. And, you know, that's the functions of what we're supposed to do. And then during the time of Ramadan, you know, they say, why is it such a, you know, non-Muslims, they don't understand like the blessed, they don't understand the blessing that the month holds. But it's just like, you know, the reason why you see most people like in the community so happy and like, you know, such with that glow on their faces, because we're doing what we're meant to be doing, you know.
You want to believe that Allah will forgive you for your sins before Ramadan even begins.
Right.
And even in Surah 39 of the Quran, right, Allah says, "O my servants who have transgressed against themselves by sinning, do not despair at the mercy of Allah," right? Indeed, Allah is the most forgiving and the most merciful. So how can you not see hope and value in yourself when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees value in you? It's like if you don't see hope in yourself, then you're giving up on Allah altogether and you're falling into the hands of the shaitan.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, man, right.
Allah divided his mercy into 100 parts, and he retained with him 99 parts. So the mercy that you think that you know on this dunya, it's going to be a completely different mercy when you see Allah on the day of judgment. We don't understand Allah's mercy, and we never will, because Allah only sent down 1/100th of his mercy. Right?
Yeah.
So,
you know, Ramadan, like in Islam, there are a lot of ways you can commit sins, but one thing people don't really think about, I think, is that there's so many opportunities too for those sins to be forgiven. You know, if you commit a sin, there's a hadith that says, you know, right when you commit a sin, pray 2 rakats right after. You know, there's the hadith about, you know, from one Jummah to the next, if you didn't commit any major sins in between that period, if you pray to Jummah, it'll be forgiven. You know, one Ramadan to the next Ramadan. So you have all these opportunities.
Yeah. And then after you sin, there's another hadith, I believe, that after you sin, I didn't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to add one to that, is that if you commit a sin, you have 6 hours up until the point of that sin to ask for forgiveness, and Allah will forgive you.
You know, in Ramadan, man, the best thing about Ramadan, I think, is that it's an opportunity where you can build good habits and just erase everything in the past. You know, you can truly walk out of Ramadan like a changed man if you really want to, you know. And this is the time, you know. It's going to force you to build good habits. It's going to force you to get rid of bad habits. It's going to force you to be in good company, you know, if you go to Taraweeh or you open iftar there. Like, this is the opportunity, you know.
Yep. And it's a life-changing experience, man. Once you experience Ramadan one time, you're eager for the next Ramadan. Like, I was so eager for this Ramadan, man. We always talk about it too. We're like, Ramadan's right around the corner. It's going to be Taraweeh at the masjid.
Yeah, you know, every year.
It's like an addiction, isn't it?
Every year, man. I say this to myself every year. Every Ramadan, I say this to myself. I'm like, you know, I need this Ramadan more than any other time of the year. But I think this time, I honestly mean it. I think I need this Ramadan more than any other period in my life, man.
Well, may Allah allow us to see this next Ramadan, inshallah.
Inshallah, I mean, That's one other thing to be mindful of, is that, you know, we have the opportunity to be able to fast during this month of Ramadan. And then, because there's people from last Ramadan that aren't with us this Ramadan.
Oh
So
man!
that's
In
one
Stockton
thing you need
over
to
here,
remember.
we've lost a lot of people among our Muslim community. Very sadly, young, old.
Young, old, you won't believe it. And it's literally happening like right before the month of Ramadan. So it's like one thing you really gotta be mindful of too is even how blessed we are to even be alive during this time.
You wanna right your wrongs while you're still alive as well, right? Anybody that you've wronged, ask for forgiveness from them, and anybody that has wronged you, ask Allah to forgive them.
I mean,
That way, your heart will be at ease before Ramadan starts, and that will reflect on your mind as well.
yeah, I mean, Shan, you're right, man. Just by making it to Ramadan, like just by lasting to it, like making to it is already an accomplishment in and of itself, you know? Like there's a dua that says, I don't know the exact wording of it, but it's like, goes along something like, Ya Allah, make us like reach Ramadan. So just by you being in that month right now is already in your favor. So, I mean, yeah. And also there's a statement that like the Salaf used to say, the Salaf mean like the first 3 generations of the Muslims, they used to say like, you know, once Iman, right? In this case, motivation to do good, it changes and like it comes up and goes down, comes up and goes down. And this is for like religious people, non-religious people, everyone pretty much, right? And they say that like the Iman, it can be as big as the mountains, right? And some days it can be as small as the dust. But during Ramadan, man, it's pretty much consistent. Like it's as big as the mountains
because
throughout the
during
whole month.
Ramadan, shaitan is locked up.
Yeah.
So if you're not making actions during Ramadan, then you really need a reality check.
Yeah.
Because if the shaitan is locked up and you're still accumulating those bad habits during the month of Ramadan, while the entire Muslim environment around you is trying their best to fast and to worship, it's a reality check. You need to wake up and realize that it's not shaitan anymore. It's you.
Yeah, it's all you, man.
I think that's especially with the younger
generation. That's a
generation.
scary thought, but that's true.
Especially with the younger generation, we're young. We don't get caught up in the act that we don't get caught up with the idea that, you know, we could potentially leave this earth one day. And it's just like, you know, once you put that in your head, this is why it's a good idea to, you know, go to the grave for a reminder that this is where we're all going to end up, rich, poor. It doesn't matter who you are.
I never thought about that. That would actually be a very good thing to do before Ramadan, is go to the grave and just read the gravestones, man. A lot of those people that passed away, they're our age. It's a reality check, you know. That's a great way to get yourself in the mindset for Ramadan.
One thing too,
good
is
advice,
that causes you to self-reflect. You know, most importantly, you need to be able to reflect on your. You need to be able to hold accountability to yourself. More importantly, because you know, the minute you don't hold accountability, most importantly, that's where you start losing your humanity, you know, because you start thinking, that's where you let your ego get the best of you, and you always think you're in this position that you're always right over everybody else, and that'll never allow you to learn and see that, you know, there's more to it than, you know, just always being right all the time.
Yeah.
Because when you're in that it's that same arrogance that causes the shaitan to, you know, fall from that such a high status to where he is right now.
Yeah.
You got to be mindful of that arrogance and realize that we're not going to be in this world forever. So it's best to right our wrongs before we don't get the chance to do that no more.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to go right back to, like, this is to bounce off your point. But you know how I was saying, like, once Iman is at their highest in Ramadan, the Salaf also said that, like, when you have those periods of, like, high Iman, that's when you need to do as much good as you can. You know what I mean? Because you're not always going to feel that motivated, right? And then, so like, take advantage when you're feeling motivated, do as much good in that like time as you can. Because then once it goes down, it's going to be way harder, you know?
Yep. And the elevation and kind of downfall of Iman is very, nobody's perfect, right? And it's very common that our Iman sometimes is going to be, like you mentioned, better at other times and worse at some times. So that's a good point, is build, when your Iman is high, do as much as you can, because later along the line, when your Iman is low, you can look back and at least be proud of yourself and motivate yourself to kind of go back to back up to that level of Iman.
You can do it again. You're right.
Yeah. It's kind of a motivation to yourself. So
yeah, that's true.
And Ramadan can be that motivation. If your Iman is elevated during Ramadan, you can use Ramadan as a motivation to elevate yourself, even when Ramadan is over.
One other important thing I wanted to touch up on too is, remember how you said that having a right environment around you is really important. I really agree with that statement, because you gotta have people who, because if you have somebody for example, like another person around you who knows your sins, what you've done or whatever. Not that it's their business, but then those the thing is, some people, they can use that against you too. They can be like, say you committed a major sin or something like that, and then they use that against you, and then it's gonna put you in this position where you're marked out to be as this bad guy, and then you're in that mindset. It's like, okay, I'm already this bad guy. Like, what's gonna prevent me from committing more bad sins? You know what I mean? That's why you gotta surround yourself with people who uplift you to doing better too, and then who remind you that it's not the end of the world that you sin. You could always make forgiveness.
Yeah. At the same time, though, even if everybody around you sees you as a bad person, when Ramadan comes, we're not going to be doing all these deeds to please other people and change about how other people feel about us. We're going to be doing all prayer and all of this so that we can please Allah. And
I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, don't let other people's opinions about you like influence you to do good, and not make you think that it's any less.
Yep.
The downside of sinning like in public is that if you sin in public a lot, right? Now everyone around you kind of has like expectations out of you, you know what I mean? So if you're someone that's trying to change themselves, people around you are gonna think you're kind of like you're going through a phase,
Yeah,
So
but hey, change your environment because Muslims are very accepting of anybody.
Yeah.
If you've sinned so much, if you sinned your whole life and you go to a masjid to make new friends, they're not gonna kick you out and be like, "Oh man, you have too many sins. We can't be your friend. Look at us. We're perfect." We don't sin and we're not perfect, but that's not our mindset. We allow people to come in no matter what kind of past they've had, no matter what kind of sins they've committed.
Yeah.
So
Ramadan.
go ahead. My bad. I think at the end of the day, we're all just trying to get better and do better for, one purpose, and that's to please Allah, So realize that, and, be somebody in the community that everybody looks up to you and says they are very uplifting, be mindful that we're not perfect people.
Yeah, and Ramadan, man, is that opportunity you get where you can really build a relationship with the people of the masjid. Everyone's there at like Ramadan, So if you go there consistently, that's a good opportunity.
Yeah, and if you build that relationship during Ramadan, when your iman is low after Ramadan, like you mentioned, you can have all these people as your backbones to kind of keep you up and keep your level of iman high. When you surround yourself around people like that, your iman is going to be higher. So take that into consideration right there.
By the way, this is just a side point, but we all met during a Ramadan. You know that? Like,
did we?
Yeah, we met during Ramadan.
That's
actually.
Crazy.
Yeah, actually, back in 2015.
Oh man, time flies. And how many Ramadans has it been since? It's been so many, huh?
Yeah.
7.
Alhamdulillah, man.
7,
I'm grateful for that. So, what do you guys think? I think this was a good way to wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
You got any more points to add? Anything you guys wanted to say?
I think that's all.
Just remember, it's a clean slate. Oh, go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna summarize. I'll say this is
man, you guys are just having a constant class today, man.
I was just gonna end off with 3 points. This is your opportunity for a clean slate. So remember that. Try to get rid of bad habits and build good habits, and go in Ramadan with a routine. Those are my 3 points.
I like those points. I think everybody, old, young, needs to follow that.
Yep. And then also anybody that holds a grudge against you, like I mentioned, ask Allah for their forgiveness. And anybody that's that you've wronged, ask Allah for your forgiveness and forgive them. Ask them for their forgiveness as well. And then also your environment, right? Ramadan's coming up. It's right around the corner. Let's make that push to change our environment if we are not in the right environment that we should be.
Mindfulness. Yes. Yeah, I think that wraps up everything then.
Pretty much.
So next week, man, we're going to be back on here and it's going to be Ramadan. So week 1 of Ramadan, it's going to be probably the first or second day of Ramadan, actually.
Yeah,
think so.
We'll see you guys then, inshallah. Aside from that, make sure you guys tune in on all platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube.
As usual, appreciate you guys tuning in with us and, listening to our thoughts and, what we have to say on this subject. Even, like I always say, even a couple minutes means a lot to us. It goes a long way.
Yep.
So thank you for that.
It's going to be exciting sharing this Ramadan with you guys too. So it's going to be one for the books.
One for the books.
Inshallah.
So inshallah. All right. Just salaam alaikum.
Listen to us soon.